Hi, I'm Madison, welcome back to my channel. Today I have my June wrap up for you. So I started off really well in the month of June, and then the last week of June I was traveling and I read nothing, 0 books, nada, nil, zilch. So this is basically all I read in the first 3 weeks of June. Let's get into it. So in the month of June, I read 10 books. I read 7 adult books and 3 YA books. I read 8 ebooks and 2 physical books. Genre-wise, I read 4 reverse harems, 4 fantasy books, and 2 eroticas. And then of course my favorite stat of the month, and that is page count. This month I read 4,100 pages. Nice and even, we love that. So as per normal, I'm going to be starting with my lowest rated read and working up to my highest rated read. I will say, however, though, I did read 4 books in the exact same series this month, and I'm going to be kind of lumping them all together rating wise. And then I also read 2 books for work, which I will not be rating or ranking or anything because they actually don't exist yet. So let me start in on those. So I did read 2 books for work. They're both 2 YA high fantasy books. One is a Witch x Witch Hunter YA fantasy coming out next October 2023. And the other one is a forbidden witchy romance that's like island sea magic based that is coming out next August. Neither of these I can talk about because they have not been announced yet. I read the very first manuscripts of them. One of them was super long, one of them was like kind of long, so yes. If you follow along on my Goodreads, you'll eventually see me put them in, but yeah. So then we're gonna start with my actually rated books, starting with my lowest rated read of this month. So I only had 1 book this month that was rated below a 4-star. The only 3-star read I had for this month was This Vicious Grace by Emily Thiede. I feel so bad about this because it's funny, everyone else except for just one of my friends has actually really loved this book and given it like a 5 out of 5 stars, has raved about it. For me, it just didn't work. For me, it just kind of kept missing the mark. I kind of just kept wanting more out of it, and it felt like while there was so much that happened in this book, also nothing happened in this book. It really does feel like it was setting up for the sequel because this whole book is leading up to this final battle, and the final battle is like this long. Bruh, you did not set up the entire book for that. I was like, what? And the romance could have been so much more angstier. So this is an Italian-based fantasy, by the way. The old language of this world is modern Italian, which is really cool. I kind of like the Italian-ness of this book. I really vibed with that. It really spoke to me. I am Italian as well, so it's always something that I find really fun when I read a book. But you have Alessa, and she is the Fenestra, and part of her prophecy is that in 5 years' time, there will be like a gigantic like massacre of these gigantic beetles that comes every 5 years to like kill everyone, and she has to pick a partner, a font, that she teams up with to kill these beetles. And her power is that like her touch kills unless it's her partner, and her partner, instead, when she touches them, she ends up being like an amplifier for their power, so she ends up kind of sucking the power out of them and being able to use it herself at like a greater scale to then kill these beetles. The only problem is that the last 3 partners that she has chosen, she has killed because she's too powerful. She keeps murdering her partners. And so it's gotten to the point now where like they're very close to the prophecy coming to fruition. And so the priest of her island is like, well, maybe she's a false prophet. Maybe we should murder her and it'll fix everything. And she's like, oh, good God, don't murder me. So she ends up having to hire a bodyguard, this very like sketchy bodyguard, to look after her while she tries to find her next partner. And that's what this is about. She ends up falling in love with her bodyguard while trying to pick her next partner and trying not to kill her next partner, because she's like, it's traumatizing when you keep killing people and you can't touch anyone. It kind of has like very much like Shadow Me vibes. I think if you really love Shadow Me, you'll definitely love this because it has a lot of those similar like feels to it. There's no love triangle or anything. She's like just romance between her and her bodyguard. But yeah, it was enjoyable. It was fun. It's just that I wanted more from it. I was super hyped for this and it ended up kind of just letting me down. So yeah. Next, we'll move into my 4-star reads. The very first I'm going to talk to you guys about is Liberty Falls by Jacquot. This is her 3rd Holy Night novella. So it's a series of erotica novellas that are set during like a different holiday. This was a 4th of July one, which just passed. So this follows Cameron and Aria, So the two of them have been like rivals since they were kids. She is the police chief of town and he is the fire chief, and this takes place on 4th of July when they end up making a bet and a wager, and then things get a little bit sexy and steamy from this bet and wager. I don't want to give anything away because it's like 100 pages and I feel like saying more than that kind of ruins everything, but this does very much lean into sensation play and the sensation kink, which is really cool because I haven't really read something that really focused on it as much as this one did, and it really kind of like showed me some new things that I hadn't read before, which I was really appreciative of. I also think it was hilarious that we have a fire chief who is into like wax play because, like, you know, fires and stuff. Anyway, that's that. I really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend the whole Holy Night series in general. They are not in any way connected. They're just all part of like a holiday series, you know? Next we have my 4.5 star, and that is going to be the Hades Quartet by Tate James. So this is Club 20. So this is 7th Circle, Anarchy, Club 22, and Timbre. That's books 1, 2, 3, and 4, all up here, as you can see. I gave 7th Circle 5 stars, Anarchy 4.5, Club 22 4 stars, and Timbre 5 stars. So I ended up just rounding it out to a 4.5 stars. I didn't enjoy it as much as I love the Madison Kate Quartet by Tate James, but I still really enjoyed this. I think that it was super fun, and I do want to say that there are huge triggers. However, for the very last book in this series, it does have on-page rape, assault, torture, literally anything you can think of happens in the last book. So huge trigger warnings there, just a little FYI, because no one talks about it since it doesn't happen till later on. But there are mentions as well of her PTSD throughout all 4 books of this series, because she was physically assaulted and also forcibly drugged by her ex-fiance. So just putting that out there as a quick trigger warning. So this series follows Hayden. This does take place after the Madison Kate Quartet, but you do not need to read that first. Now, all of Tate James's books are set in Shadowgrove. Shadowgrove is a fictional town that is ruled by a couple of different gangs, and Hades is like the big baddie of everyone and is like the controller of all the different gangs, and kind of like lets them each have their different territories, and all of Hades's clubs are considered like neutral territories for people to go to. And so you're following Hayden, and she is Hades. So she's this badass female chick who is like the top dog of all the criminal underworld, which is totally awesome. She's so cool. She rules it with her best friend named Zed. The two of them have been doing this ever since the Timberwolves massacre. So she actually massacred her entire family and her fiance 7 years prior to when this book starts. I think maybe 4 years prior to when this book starts. And she massacred them because they were involved in like the skin trade and also in PCP, and she's like completely against all that. So when this series starts off, you find out that someone that she thought she had murdered in that massacre however many years ago is actually come back to life. Like, they didn't actually die, and they are now trying to take her down, and they're trying to dismantle her entire empire. And so it's her trying to figure out like who it is that's come back to life, how to get to them, how to stop them from dismantling everything that she's done, and also dealing with the trauma that happened so many years ago now coming back for her. And it's her also having a reverse harem. She's falling in love with her best friend Zed, who she runs the enterprise with, Cass, who is a rival gang leader, and also this really sweet guy named Lucas, whose nickname is Gumdrop. He's so adorable. He has nothing to do with anything and gets drawn into it, and oh my god, did I love him so freaking much. Oh, he was the best character ever. Literally one of my favorite characters I've read all year is Gumdrop. He is priceless. He is hilarious, and I love him to death. This is just a really fun series overall. I really like Tate James with the way that she does her like reverse harems. They're super fun. This one is definitely a lot more emotional and a lot darker than the Madison Kate Quartet because of all the PTSD of that Hayden is going through throughout this series. But I thought it was super fun. I was really intrigued to see everything goes. It's just there was some shock factors that didn't work for me in this because I'd read her before. I kind of know what to expect from Tate James. She has a similar pattern with all of her books, so it just depends, but I really dug it and I thought it was super fun. We then have another 4.5 star, and that is The Beast by Jenika Snow. This is a 100-page monster erotica novella. So this is Beauty and the Beast inspired smut, but it's the idea where like the beast stays the beast never turns like into a human, you know, he's never gonna become the prince, he stays the beast the entire time. It follows very closely to the Beauty and the Beast of like the movie Beauty and the Beast, I would say, which is kind of interesting. It is very much like, oh my god, like right off the bat, because the beast is like has like a breeding kink. Also, there's knotting. Sorry, I always forget to mention that. I don't know, like I haven't really read that many like monster eroticas before, but he has a knot, which I've only read about in Omegaverse, where they're like humans with knots. Like, this is my first time reading about a beast with a knot as well, and I was like, oh my god. So it's very smutty, like very horny. 100%. Okay, and the last book, I think this is probably, oh my stars, this is gonna be the quickest and shortest wrap up I have done in like years. I'm currently looking at what the recording time is on this, and this is crazy. The last book I have is A Strange and Stubborn Endurance by Meadows. This comes out on July 26th, and if you do not pre-order this book, I will disown you. But for reals, this is one of the top 2 fantasy books I have read all year. It is a political high fantasy. The court politics in this, the court drama, the kingdom intrigue, and just all that kind of stuff really plays a huge part in this. And I love court politics. I love figuring all that kind of stuff out, which is why this super spoke to me. But it is also queer. There is an MLM romance in this. However, this does have huge triggers in it for on-page rape, on-page suicidal ideation, and on-page attempted suicide. So please do know that there is also PTSD throughout this that is going through it. So while this is a high fantasy, and a large part of this fantasy is trying to figure out who is trying to murder everyone, because someone's trying to murder them all, a larger part of this, and I would say the focus of this story, is about _ɪᴛ kind of overcoming his trauma. So you have ɪᴛ, he's supposed to be betrothed to one of the crown princesses of a neighboring kingdom as part of a peace treaty. However, when the envoy finds out that ɪᴛ is actually gay, the envoy proposes that instead of marrying him to one of the crown princesses, he gets married to the crown prince. So he ends up being sent to this brand new place that he's never been to before, this place called, Thiede, and ends up being betrothed to someone. On his way there, he almost gets murdered. When he does get there, his butler almost gets murdered, and then the next night, the king almost gets murdered. Everyone starts almost getting killed, and so it's him being thrown into this sudden betrothal and this marriage to this guy that he's never met, while also trying to figure out, like, someone's trying to murder me. And coupled with all that, a couple of days earlier, his ex-boyfriend sexually assaulted and raped him. And he's trying to deal with that as well. And so he's very much afraid. It's a very interesting political fantasy because it has to do with all the differences between these 2 neighboring kingdoms. And I feel like I could spend a lot of time talking about this, because there is so much that goes into it, especially when it comes to these 2 kingdoms and how different they are. Like, the kingdom that ɪᴛ is from is very against people who are queer. They don't think they have any rights. They think that women don't have any rights. They're just very much like racist, homophobic dicks. Whereas the place that his betrothed is from, Thiede, is from, they're very much open to people who are queer. There is a lot of people who are gender fluid, and there are, there's like magic called body magic that allows people to change from one gender to another, and they're very much more open. And so there's a lot of differences for ɪᴛ to be in this new kingdom where everything is so much more open, and how he tries to like adjust to that, because like he's had to hide who he is his entire life, and he's not very used to being like so free and open with who he is. And Thiede, really falls in love with ɪᴛ, but doesn't want to push ɪᴛ, because Thiede is fully aware of everything that ɪᴛ has gone through, and like knows that he's been sexually assaulted, and doesn't want to, push him in any way, and wants to respect him, wants to just love him, and wants to help him heal through his trauma. So that's a part of this book. Magic isn't really huge in this. There is magic in this book, but it's very much like none of our characters really practice magic fully, so it's not like very much explored. ɪᴛ's best friend is his butler manservant, who is mute, and so they actually have their own version of sign language that they use in this, which is really fun and cool to kind of learn about how they communicate and how they use that as like also part of like him being a spy, because people think he can't understand anything, but he can, which is really fun. And yeah, this is just like an overall really amazing book. I don't want to go too much more into it, because there is like a lot of like depth and information that comes from this world, and I feel like it's better for you just to explore it as your own, unless you have any of those major triggers, because they are huge triggers for this book. The only thing that I didn't think was amazing was the final reveal of who was trying to murder everyone. I thought that could have been someone else that was, a bit more shocking, but overall it was still really great and enjoyable. I loved it. I tabbed the crap out of this. I highlighted it. It made me cry. I cried 3 times in the first 100 pages reading this, just because ɪᴛ's trauma was something that I could just very much relate to, and everything that he was going through really spoke to me, and it hurt, but at the same time I was so appreciative reflective of the raw yet delicate way that Meadows handled Velison's trauma, and it was just a very beautiful novel and I fell in love with it. So yeah. Alright, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you guys did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the like button down below. If you want to see more of me, subscribe to my channel. And until next time, thanks a bunch everyone. Bye bye!